Hey, strangers.
Hey, strangers.
Welcome to another episode of the
My
Strange
microphone.
Sessions. Kurt's trying to eat his microphone.
Yeah.
He usually starts with some fun alliteration, and I just
You don't do
I
that.
gave up on trying to be creative.
That's not your thing.
I just say, hey, strangers.
That's not your thing.
No. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. How are you?
I'm hanging in. I'm tired today.
Yeah, I am too.
Actually. It's been
This
a
should
long,
be a heck of a show, guys.
it always is. It's been a long week.
Yeah.
I just haven't been sleeping that great, and I'm tired. Still no job. Looking. Didn't hear back from some of the places I applied to, but whatever. Once I win that Powerball, that $1 billion Powerball tonight, that's just going to all be in the past.
Yep, and then we can do this full time.
We can do this full time. Shout outs?
Sure.
If you don't want to listen to this, you can do this. You always do this good.
Yeah, if you don't want to listen to this part, it's going to take maybe 20 to 30 minutes because we have a lot of packages to open.
It won't take that long.
But I do post, if you're watching this on YouTube, I post the timestamp of the topic start, and Kurt also does it for if you're listening.
Yes.
Just skip ahead. We won't be offended.
No, we
We're
will
more
not.
offended when you complain about the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, that we can be.
Also, I wanted to mention my mom has been without power since Wednesday morning.
That's crazy.
It is now Saturday.
It's
everyone.
so weird. I was seeing on the news, they showed how much snow places around us got, and we literally got a small dusting.
Yeah,
because along the lake,
grass
it was,
is green.
Yeah, along the lake,
Yeah.
it was warm enough that we didn't get hit with the snow.
Yeah, west of here, some areas got, I think, close to a foot.
Yeah.
My mom is up north, and I think it was just really heavy, wet snow.
Yeah, because that's
not
what
a
was,
lot.
No, but that's what they were worried about was heavy, wet
Yeah.
snow pulling down.
And it was really windy.
It was super windy that night. Yeah, I remember that.
So she's supposed to get her power back on today, and I would like to add that she's been staying here since, she came down Thursday.
We'll bring her down in a little bit, ask her about MK Ultra.
She'll be like, what?
See what she knows.
Okay, go to shout
Okay,
outs.
shout outs to our newest strangers, and those are Rocky Northwind and Chris Cortez.
Rocky Northwind.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a real name?
I think so.
That's
I
amazing.
actually think so.
Rocky Northwind.
Yeah.
Sounds like it
sounds like
not a superhero, but
no,
like
it sounds like somebody I would have fought in Mike Tyson's Punch Out back on
oh, there you
Nintendo
go.
back in the
yeah.
day.
It's the Rocky that does that.
But
maybe.
I also want to give a shout out to students Brenna and Matthew, and of course Clara. I miss you guys so much. And a shout out to any of my students that still listen. If you still listen and you're one of my ex-students and you want a shout out, comment on TikTok and just let me know, hey, Mr. K, I want a shout out because I will totally give you one. Tell me what your real name is because a lot of times people are like, I miss you, Mr. K, and it's like I can't tell who you are because of your name.
I forgot we had a TikTok.
Yeah, so give me just a comment.
What's our TikTok?
I think the Strange Sessions.
And
I have a personal
once a
one
month?
too. Yeah, I'm not really good on there. I'm trying to get better. We should have somebody be
We have to take a short
We should have
today.
somebody be our TikTok manager. That's what we should do.
I
We'll talk
think
about
I can get someone to edit our videos.
we'll talk about that after the show. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Joe and the girls from Felicity Was Here, the podcast, which I love and I'm binging and I think I'm just about caught up. So, hey guys. And I want to give a shout out to Tennessee because I checked our stats yesterday.
Apparently
and
we're popular in Tennessee.
California is number one.
I knew that.
We knew California, but all of a sudden Tennessee is our number 2 state.
Yeah.
So what's up,
We're
Tennessee?
up there in New York too.
Yeah.
I was
yeah.
I was surprised by everyone but California.
Yeah, so Tennessee, what's up? We
Yeah.
love you guys. I love Tennessee.
Hey, y'all.
I would actually like to visit Tennessee because I remember driving through there with our dad when we were younger.
I'd love to go to Nashville.
Yes, we went through Nashville. We just drove through Nashville, but I love Tennessee. I would actually love to visit Tennessee.
I think if you're into music and food, Nashville is like the place to go.
And Krista's the only 10 I see.
Dang.
So those are my shout outs.
I have no shout outs.
Housekeeping, I want to say that I finally checked our stories Gmail yesterday,
yeah.
and Amber sent us some stories, and Dee sent us a bunch of links to the recent drowning deaths, referring to the smiley face killers. So I think what we're going to do, and we're putting the call out now already, not the next episode, because the next episode, I think we're going to have Blaine and Taylor here. But the episode after that is going to be a listener stories episode, because we have a couple voicemails, we have stories from listeners. So we're going to put out the call right now. If you would like us to read a paranormal or mysterious story that happened to you, send us a voicemail, send us a message, send us an email, and we will read it in 2 episodes from now. And if we have a ton, we'll have another listener stories towards the end of the season.
Okay.
And because of the stuff with Dee sending us the recent drowning deaths, I want to have an update episode or like a revisit where we revisit Maura Murray.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll revisit the Maura Murray stuff and we will revisit the smiley face killers and maybe one other one. But I want to have like a revisit episode too. So
Okay.
that's kind of the road plan for the very near future. But
Sounds
that's
good.
all I got for housekeeping.
Cool.
You got anything?
No, I think I would just ask for some feedback if anybody wants to give it on the camera work. Do you like that it switches from Kurt back to me? Does it look good to you? Did you like it better when I think we only did one episode where we were sitting on the same side of the table and there was just one camera?
Well, one of our listeners, Adam, suggested having a split screen where it's just on us at all times, but it's a split screen, which I get because he said it's kind of jarring with the flipping from you to me, which I understand. But holy cow,
I did
the
ask for
cameras
some,
are so good.
Yeah, and I did ask for some feedback from other people, and they didn't think it was jarring at all. But I mean, I would love to hear
let us know what you guys think.
It'd be a heck of a lot of editing. Yeah. Oh my god. It would be a lot less editing if it were just the two of us on one side of the table and one camera.
Yeah.
But
that would just be weird.
I just don't want to look like
looking,
a hack.
I'm used to looking at you, which I apparently don't even do when you're talking because I'm apparently scrolling and I'm on my phone. And
I would love it to be a drinking game where when I switch to Kurt's camera, he's looking at his phone or scrolling on his laptop.
If I'm drinking, I would be drunk and crying by the end of the episode telling sappy stories.
We're not used to this camera thing yet.
No, because I'm not used to having to care about what I wear because I generally wear the same thing, and now it's like
black all the time.
Now it's like, oh, I can't wear that because I wore that last time.
I know it's
so
funny.
Today.
He matches his car. He has a red car.
Who I'm wearing today? This is St. Vincent de Paul.
Sweet.
$1.50.
I think this is Kohl's.
And my Skinwalker Ranch t-shirt.
Nice.
So that's what I'm wearing. That's who I'm wearing
Half
today.
of my wardrobe is also St. Vincent de Paul. I call it St. Vinny's.
Oh my God. Yeah. Everybody calls it St. Vinny's here. But whenever we go in there, I just make a beeline for like the flannel stuff. Because if there's a cheap flannel shirt, I'll buy it.
It's got Kurt's name on it.
It's got my name all over it. So that's all I really got for housekeeping.
Cool.
We're just going to open this. This is just like a real minor taste test. We weren't going to even have a taste test, but I feel like we have to. So my sister-in-law, Nicole, gave me a bunch of stuff because she doesn't do keto anymore. And they subscribe to like a keto subscription box. So she gave me a ton of stuff. And I'm not a super big fan of these, but we can try them.
Can't wait to try them.
No, you might like them.
Oh, okay. It is Hawaiian barbecue. Oh, I love nuts.
Walnuts. Oh, boy.
Sorry.
Walnuts.
Family-friendly show. I bet I'll love this because,
yeah.
I do love... And walnuts are so good for you.
I know, but I'm not a big fan of walnuts. I'll try one, but I figured you might like them so you can snack on them during
unless the seasoning is gross.
Sessions.
Okay, let's rip this baby open. Maybe.
There's like keto cookies in there, and I'm like kind of hooked on them, even though they're not like a typical cookie because they're made with a different kind of flour. Mm-hmm. But I'm only gonna have a real tiny baby.
Yeah, I feel like keto stuff has a very specific texture and taste.
I'm just not a fan of walnuts.
They look good.
Did you take a picture?
Yeah, I did. I'm gonna hold one up. Is this helpful, anyone? I see people do this all the time. I don't know if I need to do that. Oh, wow, they smell barbecue-y.
Oh, they're not as seasoned as I thought.
No.
That's actually kind of good.
It is good. So they're probably not... I was expecting it to be sweeter, but I'm guessing...
That's actually really good.
Because keto, sugar would have carbs in it.
Yeah, I'm not a walnut guy, but that is actually really good. I'm going to give that
a nut you're not allergic to?
A nut I'm not allergic to. I'm going to give that an 8. I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I would give it an 8 who?
I wish it had a little more seasoning.
It's probably really annoying.
All right.
Those are good.
I'm going to give it an 8.
I'll also give it an 8.
Okay. Let's reach into...
Oh.
Is this Kathy's?
Yes.
Kathy, just reach in and grab 3 things, and then we'll save the rest from her box for next time. Oh, that sounded foodie. Whatever that was sounded crackly and foodie. Oh, wow. There's a box inside a box.
Full of boxes. What's in the box? I take a picture, but it's literally just a box.
Hopefully it's not Gwyneth Paltrow's head.
Oh, yeah, that would be weird. And also slightly disturbing. Oh my God. Whoa. Check that out.
Oh, wow.
Hope you can see that. This is riveting for the people listening.
Things could be worse. Things could be worse. Travel mug.
Oh my gosh. I'm afraid to open it and break it, but let's open it and not break it. Here, you want to look at the little card?
Yes.
Ugh. Wow, it's beautiful.
It's super beautiful.
So I wonder if there's another box just like it. Should I open the other one?
Sure. Things could be worse. Travel mug.
I see a Bigfoot.
That is so cool.
Oh my gosh, these are amazing. There's like...
Yeah. It's a things could be worse travel mug. Everyone has bad commutes. You lose your bus fare, you forget your lunch, your spaceship won't start. This mug helps you cope with hard times by reminding you that things could be much worse. You could also be pursued by giant robots, plagued by pterodactyls, pestered by zombie poodles, and worse. So cheer up.
It's literally, there's a pterodactyl.
That is an awesome. I love that.
Oh my gosh. Here. Ooh. Okay, I'm opening the other box. I have to stop looking at the display and actually.
This is so cool.
Keep it over there because I'm opening another one. That's the same one. Oh, these are amazing.
Oh, there's two of them?
Yeah.
Nice.
This is so cool. I mean, I'm terrified of breaking it, but
it's going to stay in my... I'm not going to bring it in my car because I would immediately drop it and bust it, but it's going to stay on my end table by where I drink.
Seriously?
That is so cool. And that's from Kathy.
My gosh.
That's from Kathy, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
So much.
These are awesome.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see how this works.
That is awesome.
I love these so much. Thank you.
I do too. It will be drunk out of, believe me.
I can't imagine the money people spend on stuff that they
We love you guys. I don't know how often, if we tell you that enough.
I
I don't know if we tell you that enough, but we love you guys.
We really love you guys.
And there's still more in the box?
Yeah. There's more
Okay,
in
we'll
there.
do that next time.
Okay.
I love this.
Terrible lighting, but maybe I'll take a better picture.
This reminds me of like glassware my mom and dad had when we were growing up, except ours didn't have pterodactyls and giant
And
spiders
Bigfoots.
and Bigfoots on it.
Oh, this is so cool.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Dang. Okay, so my opening... We have two more packages. These feel like books, maybe?
I don't know what that is.
I don't either. We're about to find out.
Got the...
We don't know who this is from, though?
No.
Okay.
Don't cut into the
I
product.
know. I think up here is maybe safe. I'll just do a little
snip.
There we go. Ooh. Looks like a calendar.
We got a calendar.
A Bigfoot calendar.
Yay.
Oh, okay. For once, I'm not forgetting the card. Hi, Kurt and Krista.
Oh, this is cool.
Just a little something to decorate the studio with for 2024. Can't wait for the new season. Stay strange, from Michelle. I don't like to read last names. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. This is awesome. We need to hang that up.
Yeah. Cute. So it's all like different Bigfoot?
It's all like researchers
interesting.
and
like different relics of hominoids.
That is super
so cool.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Okay.
I like that.
Over there so I don't forget.
I like that.
Me
Where
too.
are we going to put that?
I don't know.
We got room over here by me.
Okay.
Which would actually be good because then I can look that way to see dates and stuff.
Sure.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Oh my gosh.
This
These
one
have
we
been
know.
sitting here for months.
This one's from Stephanie in Texas. We know what this one is.
Oh.
And I love her immensely for sending us these.
Yeah. Oh, there's more than... Ooh.
Oh.
A hat. So let's start with that. Liberty.
Let me see.
It's an owl. Or an owl. It's an eagle.
Same
Not
thing,
an
I guess.
owl.
I
know.
like this.
That is really cool. It's a hat. And then, of course, it
Yay.
is another Washington State Missing 411.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I
Very
love
cool.
the Missing 411 collection I have.
Heck yeah. It's what brings the most new listeners in.
This might be TMI for listeners, but it's kind of become bathroom reading material. If I got to go to the bathroom for a little while, I grab one of those and I...
Well, here you go.
I got more.
If you watch Seinfeld, you
want
know
the
that
cap?
it's been flagged.
Because I will gladly take it if you don't
No,
want
you
it.
can have it. I'm not a big baseball hat person other than the
I generally
stream
don't.
sessions.
I generally don't wear baseball caps, but I'll make an exception.
Okay. Have you ever seen Kurt without a baseball cap on?
I'm
guys?
getting so bald. I am getting so very bald.
Really?
Yes. I want to.
Well, I'm sorry.
I've told the story on here that I kind of wanted when I was at Washington when I was working at the school. I kind of wanted to shave it off, and I asked the kids, and they all said you're either going to look really cool or look like you should be driving a windowless white van. We don't know which one it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think I would look
I mean,
really
it grows
cool.
back.
I know, but I don't think I would look cool. But
So I'm keeping these
I
walnuts.
might try it anyway. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you,
Love
everyone.
Thank you for sending us the Missing 401 series.
My microphone boom is
See, that didn't take that long.
squeaky.
We thought that was going to take super long.
No, we're at
and it didn't.
21 minutes, and we
Yep.
had some banter that the
Yep.
rest of the folks won't hear because that's for our Ko-fi subscribers.
Yeah.
If you want to hear us post, like, silence while we're posting
I
to
think Krista did swear once
social.
during it.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember
Something
that.
the Pulp Fiction
I did
line.
make some dirty jokes. Oh, I did say that,
You
yeah.
did make some dirty jokes.
People are paying for that.
I got to remember that kids, like, should we just jump in?
Yeah, and I did actually put in my notes that I don't think this is an episode for younger strangelings. Just because of some of the stuff I read, I wouldn't want my strangelings, if I had any, to hear this stuff. So
I don't think that it's that bad.
I think there's enough stuff, though, like
But it's not
torture and
yeah, but it's not creepy monster stuff. Like,
No, it's
I
more-
think they'd be bored by this, actually. But it's more like,
disturbing
yeah.
stuff that people do to other people.
Texted me last night that she listened to the Gary Sudbrink episode with the phone calls, and she said it was like 5:00 in the afternoon, and she had every light on in her house because she was totally freaked out by that.
Yeah.
And Clara listened to the Blue Whale episode, and she was kind of bothered by that.
Yeah.
She's like, and I said, I don't know if that's even a legitimate thing
Right.
or just like an urban legend. And she said she kind of thought it was like an urban legend too, but she said
Could
it's so
be.
disturbing that somebody would do that.
I just think there are a
So-
couple topics that I mentioned for sure that
Yeah.
I don't think people would want younger. Like if they're teenagers,
Yeah,
fine.
there's a couple that I wouldn't. Like Elsa Gate is kind of sketchy.
No, I just
with
mean
the,
this episode.
Oh, this episode I'm okay with for kids.
I
You're
disagree.
not. Okay.
Just because
Wow,
there's
this is our last episode.
just because there's talk about experimentation in laboratories that I was like, oh, I don't want to hear about that.
This could have been worse because I was
Just
gonna.
if you have sensitive strangelings,
I was gonna say
listen
this.
to it first.
I
Before
was
you
going to
let
say
them.
this at the end of the episode, but there were two topics that I was going to dive into in this one, but I decided not to for two different reasons. The first topic is Project Monarch, which is basically
It's kids, right?
no, it's
Oh.
turning people into basic sex slaves with,
Oh.
with MK Ultra and mind control, and
Okay.
that gets very dark and sketchy.
Yeah.
So I decided not to do that. So maybe that'll be a side session.
Well, yeah.
because it's disturbing.
That's actually a good idea for the
It's like if you think of the Joss Whedon show Dollhouse, that's kind of what this is, where people are getting their memories, they're getting like alternate personalities that are sex slaves and stuff, and you don't realize that, and it's kind of sketchy. So I decided to pull that one because that one's really kind of not safe for work. And the other one is the Tavistock Institute, which I'm kind of fascinated by, but it's hard to get a grasp on what exactly the Tavistock Institute does. So that's going to be in a separate episode too. So I pulled those. So that is my apology for this episode, because every episode's got to start with an apology. This
Yeah.
one didn't turn out as good as I thought it did, because this is a lot. There's a lot of rabbit holes to go down with this.
This could be a two-parter,
So
probably.
I focused on the things that I thought were important. I feel like people are going to think we went too much into the Frank Olson stuff, but I feel like that's very important.
My whole thing is the Frank Olsen
My
stuff.
whole I have the whole second half. You only have the first half. I have the second half. And I feel like that's a very important story. So I feel like this is kind of a deep one, but there's just so many rabbit holes that branch off of this.
So we
It's
could
crazy.
revisit other stuff
Yes.
further down.
Yeah, and also when we get into the idea of making a Manchurian Candidate, it's like I want to have an episode about RFK's assassination, because there's a lot tied up with people thinking that that's an MK Ultra Manchurian Candidate situation. You know, some people think JFK was. So like that stuff, I think we're going to revisit in the individual episodes when we talk about those situations, so I don't go too much into that. But this is going to pop up again. But every now and then we mention MK Ultra, so it's like we got to talk about what it is at some point. So if you haven't figured out, today's episode is about MK Ultra.
It's about Maura Murray. Just kidding.
So are we ready to dive in?
We're ready.
Okay. This first part is like basically all from Wikipedia. Like Krista and I have been talking about getting away from reading entire articles, and the whole.
I just worry about somebody being like, you just read my whole
But
thing word for word.
We generally give them credit.
We do, but I still wonder if that's okay to do.
Yeah.
So I rewrote some of mine in my own words.
I didn't, so I hope the Guardian newspaper doesn't sue us out of existence.
Well, and when I'm going to read word for word, I say that I'm going to read word for word.
But I need to get away from that too, because now that we got the cameras, like you said, I'm constantly looking at my screen. So I'm trying to figure out, because for the last 5 years we've been doing this, I've been doing it this way, and I'm trying to figure out how to go about doing it a different way. So we're working on that. So this one is going to be a lot of directly from the articles. So this is from Wikipedia.
I guess give us your feedback. What do you want to see?
What do you guys, would you guys prefer us to, but if we summarize things, the episodes are going to be a lot shorter, I feel, and people don't necessarily
I think if we had more bullet points about facts, and then we kind of
all office professional bullet points.
Oh. And then we just kind of discuss the bullet, the main, rather than, I don't know. I realized when I was rewriting some of it, I cut a lot of stuff out because
that's what I don't like doing.
There's a lot of fluff in there.
There's a lot of fluff in there.
Unnecessary stuff.
I feel like the beginning was important to set the scene, though.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I kept what I thought was crucial.
I generally don't cut stuff out because I kind of want it in there all, but then I realized that I'm reading the entire time and not even. So we're figuring out. We're still figuring out what we're doing here with this podcast.
8 seasons in.
So from Wikipedia, like most things of this ilk, we are going to go back and start this with, who do you think? Who do we always go back to when it comes to big bad stuff? Starts with an N, ends with an S. Indiana Jones hated fighting them.
What?
Nazis.
Oh.
Yep. Like most things of this ilk, we are going to go back and start this with the Nazis. During the early 1940s, Nazi scientists working at concentration camps like Auschwitz started conducting experiments on Jewish and Soviet prisoners of war in an attempt to develop a foolproof truth serum that would, in the words of one laboratory assistant to Nazi scientist Kurt Plotner, quote, eliminate the will of the person being examined. Substances such as barbiturates, morphine, and hallucinogens such as mescaline were employed in these tests to develop this truth serum. Truth serum is like an interesting rabbit hole to go down because it's not what, like an Alias, the TV show Alias and stuff like that. It's like, it's not like you get injected with this stuff and you can't not lie.
Right.
It just relaxes you and drops your inhibition, so you're more likely to not lie. But this is when they kind of started working on this stuff.
Yeah, it's really misportrayed in movies and TV.
When I was dating Natalie, after she moved out, she left one of her books with me, and it was about, I can't remember what it was called, but it was about the experiment, that's quote, scientific experiments done in the concentration camps, and holy
it's
cow,
horrifying.
That was, I literally could only read for a little bit because it is so dark and it's just horrible. But that's kind of where this whole MKUltra stuff started, was this search for a truth serum that the Nazis were kind of looking into. American historian Stephen Kinzer argues that as part of Operation Paperclip is where numerous German scientists, Nazi scientists were hired to work for the U.S., which is crazy, but that it was a thing. It's either you can be charged for war crimes or you can come over and help us, which is so crazy to me. The CIA created a continuation of these earlier Nazi experiments. In 1943, the Office of Strategic Services began developing a truth drug that would produce, quote, uninhibited truthfulness in an interrogated person. In 1947, the United States Navy initiated Project Chatter, an interrogation program which saw drug testing and the first testing of lysergic acid dilithiumide, or LSD, on human and animal subjects. But they were also testing these drugs as a possible treatment for depression. I can't imagine taking LSD because you're depressed, but I guess.
Well, microdosing is a big thing
microdosing.
Now. It's usually mushrooms, though.
Yeah.
And people swear it does help with depression.
I guess I could see that. I'm kind of interested in microdosing, but I also don't want to mess around with that. But it's interesting to like look into that stuff. In 1950, the CIA, under the direction of General Walter Bedell Smith, initiated a series of interrogation projects involving human subjects, beginning with the launch of Project Bluebird, which was officially renamed Project Artichoke. Their names.
Who comes up with these
I don't know. On August 20th, 1951.
They probably just picked the most
innocent sounding names.
Yeah,
like,
so that
what's Project Artichoke?
You would never imagine that it's what it is.
Yeah. The scope of Project Artichoke was outlined in a memo dated January 1952 that asked, quote, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation?"
Ugh.
Yeah. This is
It's so unethical
stuff.
and messed up. Yeah.
The project also studied the effects of hypnosis, forced addiction to and subsequent withdrawal from morphine and other chemicals, including LSD, to produce amnesia and other vulnerable states in subjects. Project Artichoke also aimed to employ certain viruses, such as dengue fever, dengue, dengue, I think it's dengue fever, as potential incapacitating agents. At first, agents used cocaine, marijuana, heroin, peyote, and mescaline, but they increasingly saw LSD as the most promising drug. The subjects who left this project were fogged with amnesia, resulting in faulty and vague memories of the whole experience. In 1952, LSD was increasingly given to unknowing CIA agents to determine the drug's effect on unsuspecting people. That's where I get like, wow.
Yeah, that's messed up.
One record states that one agent was kept on LSD for 77 days in a row.
And he's now in an insane asylum, probably.
A CIA report states that if drug-fueled hypnosis succeeded, assassins could be created to assassinate, quote, "a prominent politician or, if necessary, an American official."
This is like Born Identity stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. On April 13th, 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles officially created Project MKUltra and assigned Sidney Gottlieb as the head of the project. Sidney Gottlieb, not a real nice guy.
No.
He was... People that worked with him, not to his face, would refer to him as the Black Sorcerer.
Yeah, that's in my
and
part.
And as the Poisoner in Chief.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was not a guy you would want over for holiday meals. We'll just say that.
Well, and he had a habit of doing that to people at work.
Yeah. We're going to get into that with Frank Olson.
Gosh.
We'll hear a lot more about this guy.
Yeah.
Its aim was to develop mind-controlling drugs for use against the Soviets in response to alleged Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean use of mind control techniques on United States prisoners of war during the Korean War. The CIA wanted to use similar methods on their own captives and was interested in manipulating foreign leaders with such techniques. It often conducted experiments without the subject's knowledge or consent. In some cases, academic researchers were funded through grants from CIA front organizations but were unaware that the CIA was using their work for these purposes, which they did a lot. Like a lot of times CIA farmed out stuff they wanted to do to colleges, and they didn't always necessarily know that they were working on MKUltra stuff when they were doing these experiments at the colleges. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Part of this was called Sub-Project 54, which was the Navy's top-secret program called Perfect Concussion, which was supposed to use sub-audible frequency blasts to erase a person's memory. That's so crazy. This program, however, was supposedly never carried out.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I was actually on Brian Young's Transatlantic Ramblings.
History Ramblings?
Yeah, with him and
Lauren.
Lauren wasn't there last time. She had a church thing, but it was Tim Shorts was there with us, and it was about this. And and we're gonna cover this at some point. But Tim was also talking about the Havana Syndrome stuff, which has kind of come out as being like a weapon. And that's kind of what this stuff, when they talk about Perfect Concussion, which was using sub-audible frequency blasts to erase a person's memory.
It's really similar to that.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to that.
It made them really sick, though.
Yeah.
Have we talked about that on the show?
No, we need to do that in
depth.
episode 2 because that's crazy.
It is.
But there's weapons like that out there that we don't realize are even out there. Some historians assert that one goal of MKUltra and related CIA projects was to create a Manchurian Candidate-style subject. In 1964, MK Search was the name given to the continuation of the MKUltra program. The MK Search program was then divided into two projects called MK Often and MK Chickwit, which I love the name MK Chickwit. MK Often was a covert U.S. Department of Defense program developed in conjunction with the CIA. The goal of MK Often was to, quote, test the behavioral and toxicological effects of certain drugs on animal and humans. Testing of this drug was done on animals, prisoners at Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia, and military personnel at the Edgewood Arsenal. So they're testing all this stuff on people.
And animals.
MK Chickwit's goal was to, quote, identify new drug developments in Europe and Asia and to obtain information and samples. By March of 1971, over 26,000 potential agents had been acquired for future screening. 26,000 chemicals and agents to possibly use to manipulate somebody. That's crazy. A bird disease study run at Penn State University turned out to be actually funded by the CIA as research for chemical and biological dispersion of these agents. So they're saying, yeah, we want to see how this bird disease transmits. So then they instead sent out this inert gas to disperse it over a populated city to see how these incapacitating agents would affect the populace and how it would spread. Which is, yeah, we're not always,
like our own
it's
government
like
did
we're
that.
not always the most ethical.
Oh,
No.
No.
MK Ultra is said to have ended in 1973, and most MK Ultra records were destroyed that year by order of CIA Director Richard Helms, so it has been difficult for investigators to gain a complete understanding of the more than 150 funded research subprojects sponsored by MK Ultra and related CIA programs. So they went in and destroyed all the stuff. We know some of it right now, but what we know is probably
just the tip of the iceberg.
5% of what was all done, the tests that were all run on people. Like, it's crazy. The MK Ultra stuff is crazy. So LSD. LSD was pretty much the dominant agent explored in MK Ultra. Documents obtained from the CIA by John D. Marks under Freedom of Information in 1976 showed that back in 1953, the CIA considered purchasing 10 kilograms of LSD, which is enough for 100 million doses.
Dang.
Yeah. The proposed purchase aimed to stop other countries from controlling the supply. The documents showed that the CIA had purchased some quantities of LSD from Sandow's laboratories in Switzerland. So 10 kilograms of LSD, enough for 100 million doses. Just to buy it so that other countries didn't buy it is, that's not really cool. Once Project MK Ultra got underway in April 1953, experiments included administering LSD to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and prostitutes, or, as one agency officer put it, quote, people who could not fight back. That's so sad.
Yeah, it is.
In one case, they administered LSD to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days straight. They also administered LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, and members of the general public to study their reactions. The aim was to find drugs that would bring out deep confessions or wipe a subject's mind clean and program them to be a robot agent.
That's an absolute nightmare.
It is. It is such a nightmare. Military personnel who received the mind-altering drugs were also threatened with court-martials if they told anyone about the experiments. LSD and other drugs were often administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent, which was a direct violation of the Nuremberg Code that the U.S. had agreed to follow after World War II. Many veterans who were subjected to experimentation are now seeking legal and monetary reparations. In one of the more well-known experiments called Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up several brothels within agency safe houses in San Francisco to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events. The men visited prostitutes and were then dosed with LSD. The brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because you're not going to complain about it.
Right.
If you
Otherwise,
went to see a
people
prostitute.
know.
Yeah. So it is so dirty.
Wow.
In other experiments where people were given LSD without their knowledge, they were interrogated under bright lights with doctors in the background taking notes. They told subjects they would extend their trips if they refused to reveal their secrets. The people under this interrogation were often CIA employees, U.S. military personnel, and agents suspected of working for the other side in the Cold War. Long-term debilitation and several deaths resulted from this. Heroin addicts were bribed into taking LSD with offers of getting more heroin. So this is rough. This is
Yeah.
like, when you think of like Clockwork Orange, where the guy's got his eyes propped open with toothpicks, forced to watch this mind control video. That's kind of what this is, but it's also kind of not. But we'll get into that more at the end. Like, I think people have a misconception of what MK Ultra was really about. It started out as being about interrogation, and somewhere along the line it became controlling a person's mind. But it originally started out as interrogation. Some people think that it stayed with just interrogation, where other people think it went more into how to erase a person's personality and insert a new personality. But now this is the one that we're going to kind of talk a lot about, but I think this one is really important. And this is the case of Frank Olson. This is a biggie, and this is one of the reasons why we know kind of what we know about MK Ultra, because of his whole situation. So if Krista wants to
dive in,
I will avoid looking at. I just want to get to the point where I'm going to take over for you.
So
okay. Now I will not look at I will only look at you.
Now this is from that Guardian article.
A really good article from The Guardian.
September 19th article in The Guardian called From Mind Control to Murder, How a Deadly Fall Revealed the CIA's Darkest Secrets. So it starts talking about that Sidney Gottlieb,
yeah.
the chemist who directed MK Ultra, thought that since its effects were temporary, LSD could be given to high-ranking officials and, in turn, impact the outcome of important meetings, speeches, and the like. In an attempt to study the difference between laboratory tests and the impact of LSD and how it could be utilized in clandestine operations, he began experimenting with administering LSD to unsuspecting people in normal settings without their knowledge. In the beginning, the entire technical services team tried it, but eventually the experiment shifted to drugging outsiders with no explanation. So much so that surprise acid trips became a well-known occupational hazard for CIA operatives.
Yeah. If you worked at the CIA, there was some point where you were going to get drugged unknowingly.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
You know what's interesting about the FBI is that I don't believe they ask questions about drug use. And if you've ever used drugs, you're like, at least it used to be.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed in the FBI, and the CIA is drugging their own people regularly. As you can imagine, the results were unpredictable. One operative who consumed LSD via his morning cup of joe experienced a psychotic episode after seeing monsters in every car that passed him as he spent his trip running around Washington, D.C.
That just freaks me out so much.
100%.
Like the idea of
it changes your whole reality.
The idea of taking LSD completely freaks me out.
Yeah.
I would never, ever in a million years do to get slipped it at work.
Yeah, not know it.
Coffee.
And you think your whole world just blew
up. That's like one of my big nightmares.
So cruel.
That's one of my big nightmares, is to be drugged like that unknowingly, where I lose a grip on
in touch with reality.
Yeah. That's just so crazy. And there you would just
thought the sun blinks was freaky.
Yeah, there you just get slipped in your coffee, get to work in the morning, and somebody doses your coffee with LSD.
In short, Gottlieb was not ethical. He became known, as Kurt said, around the organization as, quote, the Black Sorcerer or Poisoner in Chief. So I'm quoting now directly from the article. Quote, shortly before dawn on a cold November morning in 1953, glass shattered high above 7th Avenue in Manhattan. Seconds later, a body hit the sidewalk. Jimmy, the doorman at the Statler Hotel. Isn't the Statler Hotel, like, famously haunted?
Statler?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I think it is. Google it.
I put my phone way over there.
Oh,
so
that's
I wasn't
right.
on
So
my
he
phone.
won't look at it.
She yelled at me for looking at my phone while she was talking.
I'm pretty sure
the Statler Hotel?
Destination Truth has done a couple episodes there.
Well, Frank Olson died right outside of it, so there's at least one
What
person.
is the hotel that Elisa Lam?
That was in like San Francisco. It wasn't the Statler. What was the name of the Elisa Lam hotel? That was the one where like serial killers had stayed there and stuff.
Statler Hotel, because this is really bothering me.
I don't remember hearing the Statler Hotel come up in ghost stuff.
Statler Hotel. I should say haunted. This is riveting. Sorry, guys, but I have to know like immediately.
I don't remember hearing the name Statler Hotel with haunted places. There's hotels that like jog my memory as being haunted, but the Statler Hotel.
New York's most haunted, the Statler Building.
Maybe it is.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, like I said, we know Frank Olson died there for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I can't imagine that, being a doorman at a hotel and all of a sudden somebody plummets from...
I can't either. That would be insane. So Jimmy, the doorman at the Statler Hotel, was momentarily stunned. Then he turned and ran into the hotel lobby. The night manager peered up through the darkness at his hulking hotel. After a few moments, he picked out a curtain flapping through an open window. It turned out to be room 1018A. 2 names were on the registration card, Frank Olson and Robert Lashbrook. Police officers entered room 1018A with guns drawn. They saw no one. The window was open, and they had pushed open the door to the bathroom and found Lashbrook sitting on the toilet, head in hands. He had been sleeping, he said, and, quote, I heard a noise and then I woke up. One officer said, quote, the man that went out the window, what was his name? Olson, came the reply, Frank Olson. Frank had apparently gotten up in the middle of the night in his underwear and ran across the pitch-dark room and dove through a closed window that not only had the shade closed, but the curtains were drawn as well. The night manager questioned the switchboard operator regarding whether or not any calls had recently been made from room 1018A. Luckily, not only had there been an outgoing call, but she had eavesdropped.
Which, hey,
as all good switchboard operators
did. In all
did.
fairness, if I was a switchboard operator back in the days when you could connect and you could listen to their conversation, I'd have been Snoopy.
Yeah. Actually, this is the part I rewrote in my own words. But I said, as all good switchboard operators did back in the day. I feel like old movies from like the 50s, they were always like listening, which is so funny.
It's so crazy to think about back in the day when they had to connect.
Yeah. Jim's mom worked as a switchboard operator.
I remember you saying that. Like
crazy.
A switchboard operator. That's crazy.
Someone in the room had called a Long Island number belonging to Dr. Harold Abramson, who was not only a distinguished physician, wow, I can't talk today, an LSD expert, but one of the CIA's medical collaborators. Quote, well, he's gone, the caller had said. Abramson replied, well, that's too bad.
That's so sketchy to me.
Like they knew
that
it was going to happen.
That is so sketchy to me that he's like, well, he's gone.
Zero surprise.
He's gone. Well, that's too bad. Like, yeah.
Frank Olson and Robert Lashbrook were scientists who helped direct one of the U.S. government's most highly classified intelligence programs. When Frank's wife, now widow, Allison Olson, and her 3 children were told that Frank, quote, fell or jumped to his death from a hotel window, they were shocked and devastated, but didn't question what they were told and did not object to having a closed casket due to the state of Frank's body. That could have been the end of Frank's story. However, decades later, the CIA admitted that, not long before his death, he had been lured to a retreat and given LSD without his knowledge. Frank had confided in Alice that he was thinking about leaving the CIA, that he had made a, quote, terrible mistake. It became apparent that Frank was feeling guilt or remorse over the work that he was doing, and his colleagues began to consider him to be a risk to their operation. These revelations are what led him to room 1018A. Frank was one of the first scientists assigned to the secret U.S. biological warfare laboratories at Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland during the Second World War. Throughout his career, he worked with a handful of colleagues, including Harold Abramson, to whom the outgoing call was made from the hotel. Others included ex-Nazi scientists, as you mentioned before, who were brought to the U.S. through Operation Paperclip. These scientists worked on aerosol technologies, which are methods of spreading germs or toxins or defending against such attacks. Olson also worked with members of the U.S. intelligence community who experimented with truth drugs overseas. Okay, now I'm going to be reading directly from the article. Okay, quote. Olson was discharged from the Army in 1944, but remained at Fort Detrick on a civilian contract and continued his research into aerobiology. Several times he visited the secluded Dugway Proving Ground in Utah.
And it's weird, my dad was at Dugway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because after he
died, an episode on your dad.
I know, after he died, we got his notebook that had where he had all been, and it's like Fort Knox, Dugway. He was at Dugway. You know, I found out he was at Area 51. So I don't think he did anything super covert, but he knew.
But he was there.
But he knew stuff was going on.
Yeah. That particular location was used for testing living biological agents, munitions, and aerosol cloud production. He co-authored a 220-page study entitled Experimental Airborne Infections, which described experiments with airborne clouds of highly infectious agents. That's messed up.
Like, think of COVID. We're not going to get into a discussion about COVID,
Yeah.
the legitimacy of it, but that was
A
minor.
theory.
That was minor compared to what they are kind of testing,
In 1949, he traveled to the Caribbean for Operation Harness, which tested the vulnerability of animals to toxic clouds. The next year, he was part of Operation Sea Spray, in which a dust engineered to float like anthrax was released near San Francisco.
I know.
He regularly traveled to Fort Terry, a secret army base on Plum Island off the eastern tip of Long Island, which was used to test toxins too deadly to be brought on the U.S. mainland. I wonder how many people out there suffer from illnesses
I bet
that
a
have
lot.
no explanation.
Yeah, because they
That was a result of something like
either
this.
working at a place like that or
Unknowingly
them testing
subjected.
stuff. Because of,
That's crazy.
it's not 100% sure that the government stopped testing stuff on.
Right.
A light just did.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that the government has
Lights
stopped.
flashing and I'm freaking out like, oh
you
God.
Pick some small town in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
What better place to test stuff on than that?
I feel like Wisconsin's off the radar for all that stuff. Hopefully.
No, I'm sure Wisconsin's high on the list of
No.
dinky little towns. That's probably what happened with Dublin. Dublin
Oh,
probably
right.
got tested
The
on.
town that didn't
The
exist.
town that doesn't exist.
Olson succeeded Schwab as chief of the Special Operations Division. His job description was vague, but tantalizing. Collect data of interest to the division with particular emphasis on the medico-biological aspects, and coordinate his work with other agencies conducting work of a similar or related nature. Super vague. That meant the CIA. Olson's specialty was the airborne distribution of biological germs. Frank developed hand-sized weapons that could easily have been featured in countless, this is my words now, in countless James Bond movies.
Yep.
Including poisons disguised as shaving cream and insect repellents that included a variety of lethal substances, including anthrax. Can't you just see a James Bond villain using a cigarette lighter that gave a lethal dose of gas,
100%.
or a lipstick that could kill on contact, and a pocket inhaler that induced pneumonia, all of which were items Frank was actually developing.
The inhaler inducing pneumonia is
That's
frightening.
so messed up.
I know.
People need those things
But this
to
is
live.
this is stuff they did. They wanted Fidel Castro. They came up with these ideas to kill him. Where they were gonna put. He'd like to go deep sea diving, and they were gonna wipe the inside of one of the wetsuits with I don't remember if it was tuberculosis. It was like some kind of really bad virus, and they were gonna. He liked picking up seashells, so they were gonna rig a seashell up to explode when he picked it up. Stuff like that is so
James
Bond villain.
Just like biological and chemical warfare
That is
so terrifying to me.
It is. It 100% is.
Olson would eventually step down as chief of the Special Operations Division in 1953 due to the pressures of the job, but by then had also joined the CIA. It was at this research facility that he came to know Sidney Gottlieb and his deputy, Robert Lashbrook, the two scientists who would soon be running the top-secret program known as MK-Ultra. Again from the article, quote, Gottlieb was the CIA's chief poison maker. Over 2 decades, he oversaw medical experiments and special interrogation projects in which hundreds of people were tormented and many minds were permanently shattered.
Again, that's a guy you don't want over for the Thanksgiving meal.
Right.
You end up with mescaline
You're
in
all
your stuffing.
tripping at the end of the meal.
Exactly.
During this period, there was an obsession at the CIA. There is a way to control the human mind, and if it can be found, the prize will be nothing less than global mastery. MK-Ultra was a top-secret program of experiments in mind control that used, as its basic formula, doses of LSD given to, quote, expendables. Gottlieb wanted to discover how much LSD a human being could take. Could there be a breaking point, he wondered? A dose so massive that it would shatter the mind and blast away consciousness, having a void into which new impulses or even a new personality could be implanted.
It's so disturbing.
I feel like you're almost giving someone a lobotomy at some point.
You are, but you're giving them without actually cutting into the
Yeah.
brain, you're basically giving them a lobotomy.
That's messed up. This is the part that I was like, this isn't really for strangelings. In his laboratory at Fort Detrick, Olson directed experiments that involved gassing or poisoning laboratory animals. These experiences disturbed him. He'd come to work in the morning and see piles of dead monkeys.
That is...
His son Eric later recalled, that messes with you. He wasn't the right guy for that.
I badly need a job, but I could not.
Ugh,
I could not. Even like the cosmetic companies that test...
I only buy cruelty-free. 100%.
I do too. Like I'll only buy stuff that's
Elf is a
marketed
great
as cruelty-free because I cannot imagine having a job where you're...
It's so pointless. We don't need to do that anymore.
No.
And by the way, be careful. Just because you think it's cruelty-free, if you're buying a product that they sell in China, they're testing on animals because China requires it.
Seriously?
So, yeah. So there are people that, or products that appear, you might think they're cruelty-free, but you have to dig a little deeper.
But coming into work in the morning and seeing piles of dead animals is just like...
And monkeys. I mean, any animal in general would be devastating to me, but monkeys are just so like...
Yeah. Cute.
Just a few steps away from human, you know
That's
what I mean?
why they test them on, because they're so close to being human.
Olson also saw human beings suffer. Although not a torturer himself, he observed and monitored torture sessions in several countries. In CIA safe houses in Germany, that's like not the definition of a safe house. According to one study, Olson witnessed horrific, brutal interrogations on a regular basis. Detainees who were deemed expendable, suspected spies or moles, security leaks, etc., were literally interrogated to death in experimental methods combining drugs, hypnosis, and torture to attempt to master brainwashing techniques and memory erasing.
Like, how can someone willingly do that as a job?
Right.
Like
Look at the Nazis, though.
Yeah, but
things that
if you think you're doing it in the service of the country, maybe... If
a
you're
lot of them
you can
probably
fool
did
yourself,
it out of fear, too.
Yeah, out of fear, but fooling yourself into thinking you're doing it for the greater good. But there is no... That's like the Milgram experiment. Like, I 100% can guarantee that I would not have gone through with the Milgram experiment.
What is that?
That was the experiment they did back in the day when... I don't remember what they were supposedly testing electroshock therapy. So you're in a room here with a control panel, and the person is in the room next to you, and you have a gauge that determines how big of a shock you're giving that person.
That sounds familiar.
And you have a researcher with you telling you, no, increase it to 10. You know, it starts out, and then after a little bit, you can hear the person like yelp in pain in the room next to you, and the researcher is like, increase it another 10. And it gets to the point where you hear the person screaming.
And the test is on you.
The test is actually
dial.
on you to see if you're going to follow the researcher telling you need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where you would hear the person scream in pain in the next room, and then they wouldn't be screaming anymore, where you would assume they're dead. And a lot of people still continue to increase the charge because the researcher was telling them to. There is no way that I would have gone through with that. I would have been like, no.
I don't even think I could have done the first one.
No. As soon as I heard a person yelp in pain, I would have been like, I'm done with this. But it was an experiment to see if people would follow orders.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
And it's messed up how many people would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
And what's interesting to me about this is they're not actually trying to interrogate and get information. They're literally just seeing how far
much they can push a
people.
person. Yeah.
So they're not even trying. There's no end game other than
this is dark.
testing
This is
the
dark
technique.
stuff. This is brutal.
It is. As Thanksgiving approached in 1953, again, Thanksgiving. Olson received an invitation to gather on Wednesday, November 18th, for a retreat at a cabin on Deep Creek Lake in western Maryland. This retreat was one in a series that Gottlieb convened every few months. Officially, it was a coming together of two groups: 4 CIA scientists from the Technical Services staff, which ran MK-Ultra, and 5 Army scientists from the Special Operations Division of the Chemical Corps. In reality, these men worked so closely together that they comprised a single unit. They were comrades in search of cosmic secrets. It made sense for them to gather, discuss their projects, and exchange ideas in a relaxed environment.
Don't ever go to a party at Sidney
retreat?
Gottlieb. Yeah, don't ever go to a retreat on an island hosted by Sidney Gottlieb.
The first 24 hours of the retreat were uneventful. On Thursday evening, the group gathered for dinner and then settled back for a round of drinks. Lashbrook, Gottlieb's deputy, produced a bottle of
Cointreau.
Cointreau.
I actually want to try Cointreau. That's it's like Benedictine. Like these fancy cognac like these fancy drinks.
Super expensive.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And he poured glasses for the company. Several, including Olson, drank heartily. Oh boy. After 20 minutes, Gottlieb asked if anyone was feeling odd.
Yeah. If you ever had a party hosted by Sidney Gottlieb and he starts asking you if you feel odd.
How's everyone feeling?
Yes, that's a red flag.
Several said they were. Gottlieb then told them that their drinks had been spiked with LSD. Shocker.
Yeah.
I think they would expect this by now.
You would think.
I guess this was 1953, though, so it was early on. Didn't this all start in 1953?
Yeah.
So maybe they didn't know this was the pattern.
Testing.
The news was not well received, as you can imagine. Even in their altered state, the subjects could understand what had been done to them. Olson was especially upset. According to his son Eric, he became quite agitated and was having a serious confusion with separating reality from fantasy.
See, and I would freak out like Olson did. I would have been like, what?
Yeah. Soon, though, he and the others were carried away into a hallucinatory world. Gottlieb later reported that they were boisterous and laughing, unable to continue the meeting or engage in sensible conversations. The next morning, they were in only slightly better shape.
There's videos online of soldiers being given LSD and they're like hanging in the tree and laughing and stuff, and it's disturbing. Like, it's black and white, old footage, and it's disturbing stuff. I mean, they might have had a good time. You never know, but it's just like the whole idea just freaks me out.
A lot of people take it
the whole
as
idea
recreation.
just freaks me out.
The meeting broke up. Olson headed back to Friedrich. By the time he arrived, he was a changed man. Olson had spent 10 years at Fort Detrick and... Was that supposed to be Fort Detrick, not Friedrich?
I don't know.
Olson had spent 10 years at Fort Detrick and knew most, if not all, of the Special Operation Division's secrets. He had repeatedly visited Germany and brought home pictures from Heidelberg and Berlin, where the U.S. military maintained clandestine interrogation centers. He was one of several Special Operations Division scientists who were in France on August 16, 1951, when an entire French village, Point Saint-Esprit, was mysteriously seized by mass hysteria and violent delirium that affected more than 200 residents and caused several deaths. The cause was later determined to have been poisoning by ergot, the fungus from which LSD was derived.
Yeah.
Perhaps most threatening of all, if U.S. forces did indeed use biological weapons during the Korean War, for which there is circumstantial evidence but no proof, Olson would have known. The prospect that he might reveal any of what he had seen or done was terrifying. Mm-hmm. He was very, very open and not scared to say what he thought, Olson's friend and colleague Norman Cornorier later recalled. He did not give a damn. Oops, I swore. Right out loud. Frank Olson pulled no punches at any time. That's what they were scared of, I am sure.
Yeah, you dose this guy with LSD against his will, and now he's mad.
Yeah,
and he knows
and already outspoken.
He knows your secrets.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh boy.
Olson's doubts deepened. In spring 1953, he visited the top secret microbiological research establishment at Porton Down in Wiltshire, where government scientists were studying the effects of sarin and other nerve gases.
Sarin is horrible.
Nerve gases,
Yeah.
that is like a freaky thing.
Yeah.
On May 6th, the volunteer subject, a 20-year-old soldier, was dosed with sarin there, began foaming at the mouth, collapsed into convulsions, and died an hour later. Afterward, Olson spoke about his discomfort with a psychiatrist who helped direct the research, William Sargent. A month later, Olson was back in Germany. On that trip, according to a later reconstruction of his travels, Olson visited a CIA safe house near Stuttgart where he saw men dying, often in agony, from the weapons he had made.
I cannot imagine that.
Yeah, one thing to go from creating something in a laboratory and maybe watching how it affects animals, but then seeing the effect on
people die
humans.
by something that you created?
Yeah. After stops in Scandinavia and Paris, he returned to Britain and visited Sargent again. Immediately after their meeting, Sargent wrote a report saying that's his last name.
Yep.
He's not a sergeant.
No, he's Mr. Sargent.
Sargent wrote a report saying that Olson was, quote, deeply disturbed over what he had seen in CIA safe houses in Germany and displayed symptoms of not wanting to keep secret what he had witnessed. Mm-hmm. He sent his report to his superiors with the understanding that they would forward it to the CIA. Sargent said later, quote, there were common interests to protect. 5 days after being dosed with LSD, Olson was still disoriented. I would like to know how much he gave them.
I don't know. But I'm assuming where it's like pot, where it affects different people differently.
Yeah.
One person might not have been affected by the amount they got,
Right.
but Olson might have been badly
It's the
affected
chemical
by
reaction in your
Yep.
body.
Yep.
Ruitt, his boss at the Special Operations Division, called Gottlieb to report this. Gottlieb asked him to bring Olson in for a chat. At their meeting, Gottlieb later testified Olson seemed, quote, confused in certain areas of his thinking. He made a quick decision. Olson must be taken to New York City and delivered to the physician most intimately tied to MK Ultra, Harold Abramson. Again, the person that outgoing call went to.
Yeah. Yep.
Alice Olson was told that Abramson was chosen because her husband, quote, had to see a physician who had equal security clearance so he could talk freely. Likely story.
The whole phone call where he's like, he's gone. Well, that's too bad. Yeah, like.
That was partly true. Abramson was not a psychiatrist, but he was an MK Ultra initiate. Gottlieb knew that Abramson's first loyalty was to MK Ultra, or as he would have put it, to the security of the U.S. So crazy that they say that this is about the security to the U.S. when it's our own people that they're destroying.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're doing it in the service of the greater good to eventually.
I think it's just like
not cool.
Gottlieb was just like a sick person.
Yeah, he's like the James Bond villain. He's like the James Bond villain.
Yeah. That made him the ideal person to probe Olson's inner mind. Olson told Abramson that ever since the Deep Creek Lake retreat, say that 5 times fast, he had been unable to work well. He could not concentrate and forgot how to spell. He could not sleep. Abramson sought to reassure Olson, who seemed to relax afterwards. Yeah, was it just a conversation, or did he give him something else? Like
maybe
at
that's
this
why.
point,
Maybe that's why I don't feel good lately. Are you dosing my coffee when I come here to
yeah, I
test?
go to Quick Trip first, and I rig the
Yeah,
machine.
can you just put LSD in this machine?
A week had passed since Olson was given LSD at Deep Creek Lake. He planned to return to his family for Thanksgiving dinner. The day after seeing Abramson, accompanied by Lashbrook and Ruitt, he boarded a flight to Washington. An MK Ultra colleague was waiting when they landed. Ruitt and Olson got into his car for the drive to Friedrich. Okay, Friedrich is a place.
Okay.
Soon after they set off, Olson's mood changed. He asked that the car be stopped. Olson turned to Ruitt and announced that he felt, quote, ashamed to meet his wife and family because he was so mixed up. Ruitt suggested Olson return to New York for another session with Abramson. Olson agreed, so they took a taxi to Abramson's weekend home on Long Island. Abramson spent about an hour with Olson, followed by 20 minutes with Lashbrook. The next morning, Jim just texted me. The next morning, Abramson, Lashbrook, and Olson drove back to Manhattan. During a session at his 58th Street office, Abramson persuaded Olson that he should agree to be hospitalized as a voluntary patient at Maryland Sanatorium. And since we know they experiment on mental patients, that doesn't feel like a safe option either.
Not really. Especially
Olson,
since he's been dosed with LSD already.
Right.
And they
They're probably like,
let's study the after
isolate
effects.
him where we can really do it.
Yep.
Olson and Lashbrook left, registered at the Statler Hotel, and were given room 1018A. Over dinner at the Statler, Olson told Lashbrook that he was looking forward to his hospitalization. He talked about books he would read. Sounds like a little vacay. Lashbrook later said he was almost the Dr. Olson I knew before the experiment. The two returned to their room. Olson washed his socks in the sink, watched TV for a while, and lay down to sleep. At 2:25 a.m., he went out the window.
And he does not sound like he was in any kind of mind frame where he was suicidal.
No.
So...
It makes you wonder if he was dosed again.
Well, I got the second half of this whole article, but what do you think so far?
Messed up.
It's messed up.
Super disturbing.
Anytime that you have like a CIA guy that knows a lot of stuff that is starting to question and is going to talk, you know something
bad's going to happen.
Yeah, you know somebody's going to get
offed,
windowed or something.
Windowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Like I can't imagine being in his shoes, you know, like dosed with LSD. Like that is, like you said, that's my nightmare is going to the party on an island and being dosed with LSD. So this is continuing directly from the article from The Guardian. Every Secret Service needs officers who specialize in cleaning up messes. That always makes me think of Mr. Wolf from Pulp Fiction.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like one of
Harvey,
my,
isn't it
that's,
Harvey
yeah,
Keitel?
that's one of my two favorite segments from Pulp Fiction. Like number one is the Bruce Willis stuff in the pawn shop.
Yeah.
But the other one is like the whole Mr. Wolf
Yeah.
segment. Like
I love how
that.
they're Vincent Vega and what's the other guy's character's name? I can't think of his name. They're always so sharply dressed, and by the end of the show, they're in like t-shirts,
volleyball
and shorts.
t-shirts.
And yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Every Secret Service needs officers who specialize in cleaning up messes. In the CIA of the 50s, those officers worked for Sheffield Edwards at the Office of Security. The cover-up he directed in the hours and days after Frank Olson died was a model of brisk efficiency. With the calm self-assurance for which he was known at the CIA, Edwards announced how the cover-up would unfold. First, the New York police would be persuaded not to investigate and to cooperate in misleading the press. Second, a fake career, a quote, legend, would be constructed for Lashbrook, who, as the sole witness, would be questioned by investigators and could under no circumstances be recognized as working for the CIA, much less as part of MKUltra. Third, the Olson family would have to be informed, placated, and kept cooperative, which is so sketchy. You know, like I can't imagine that knowing, like for her to know her husband died like this way.
Oh, yeah.
While Alice, at home in Maryland, was being informed of her husband's death, Lashbrook was welcoming the CIA cavalry to room 1018A at the Statler. It took the form of a single officer in internal reports. He is called, quote, Agent James McSee. Later, he was identified as James McCord, who would go on to become a footnote to U.S. political history as one of the Watergate burglars.
Interesting.
Yeah, McCord had previously been an FBI agent specializing in counterintelligence. Making police investigations evaporate was one of his specialties. All so sketchy. As soon as Edwards called McCord before dawn on November 28th, he swung into action. He took the first morning plane to New York and arrived at the Statler Hotel around 8 a.m. He spent about an hour questioning Lashbrook and then, at about 9:30 a.m., advised him to go to the morgue at Bellevue Hospital as the police had requested to identify Olson's body. While he was away, McCord searched room 1018A and nearby rooms. Shortly after noon, Lashbrook returned to the Statler where McCord was waiting. Over the next 4 hours, Lashbrook made a series of telephone calls. One call was to Sidney Gottlieb. When he hung up, he told McCord that Gottlieb had instructed him to go to Abramson's office, pick up a report, and take it back to Washington by hand. Lashbrook carried Abraham's report to Washington on the midnight train. CIA security officers in New York took care of the remaining details. The investigating police concluded that Olson had died from multiple fractures subsequent upon a jump or fall. That became the official narrative. During the successful cover-up, Olson's death was a near disaster for the CIA. It had come very close to threatening the very existence of MKUltra. Gottlieb and his bosses at the CIA might have taken this as a moment for reflection. In light of his death, they could have reasoned further experiments with psychoactive drugs should be stopped, or at least stopped on unwitting subjects. You think? Instead, they proceeded as if Olson's death had never happened. On June 12th...
They're like, let's double down on this.
Yeah. Like, wouldn't that make you think that we should stop maybe doing this? You know?
Well, think of all the deaths that led up to that, though.
Yeah.
But this is one of their
obviously
leading...
didn't stop
Yeah,
them.
this is a leading scientist, though.
And somebody they knew. You know. On June 12th, 1975, the Washington Post ran a story about an Army scientist who had been drugged with LSD by the CIA, reacted badly, and jumped out of the window of a New York hotel. This story, with its lurid mix of drugs, death, and the CIA, proved irresistible. For the next several days, reporters barraged the CIA with demands to know more. The Olson family called a press conference in the family's backyard. Alice read a statement saying that the family had decided to file a lawsuit against the CIA, perhaps within 2 weeks, asking for several $1 million in damages. She insisted that her husband had, quote, not acted irrational or sick during the last days of his life, but he was rather, quote, very melancholy, and said that he was going to leave his job soon. She said, quote, since 1953, we have struggled to understand Frank Olson's death as an inexplicable suicide. The true nature of his death was concealed for 22 years. Besides announcing plans to sue the CIA, the Olson family also asked the New York Police Department to open a new investigation. The Manhattan District Attorney, Robert Morgenthau, replied immediately, promising that his office would begin looking into certain aspects of the case. Alarm bells went off at the White House after the Olsen family announced its plan to sue the CIA. A lawsuit, if allowed to proceed, would give the family, as well as homicide detectives in New York, a tool they could use to force disclosure of deep secrets. President Ford's chief of staff, Donald Rumsfeld, and his deputy, Richard Cheney, who they were big in the, was it 2000s? Like Cheney and
so.
yeah, Rumsfeld, I mean, were involved in this too, recognized the danger. Cheney warned Rumsfeld in a memo that a lawsuit might force the CIA, quote, to disclose highly classified national security information.
And also atrocities that they've been committing.
100%.
That's more what they're worried about,
so
probably.
Dick Cheney's like, let's head this off at the pass. To head off this disaster, he recommended that Gerald Ford make a public, quote, expression of regret and express a willingness to meet personally with Mrs. Olsen and her children. Ford took his aide's advice. He invited Alice and her 3 adult children to the White House. On 21st of July, 1975, they met in the Oval Office. It was a unique historical moment, the only time an American president has ever summoned the family of a CIA officer who died violently and then apologized on behalf of the U.S. government. Later, they met with CIA Director William Colby at the agency's headquarters in Langley, Virginia. He apologized for what he called a, quote, terrible thing that should never have happened. I'm sure it was super heartfelt, too.
He's just trying to make it go away.
Colby continued saying, quote, some of our people were out of control in those days. They went too far. There were problems of supervision and administration. You think?
That's an understatement.
It is an understatement. White House lawyers then offered the Olsen family $750,000 in exchange for dropping its legal claims. After some hesitation, the family accepted. It's like, what do you do in that situation, you know?
The battle they're trying to win is like impossible.
No, and the fact that they got this far to get offered $750,000,
which back then
was a ton of money.
Yeah.
Congress then passed a special bill approving the payment, and that would have closed the case if Frank Olsen had remained quiet in his grave. Eric Olsen, Frank's son, waited another decade until after his mother died before taking his next step, arranging to exhume his father's body.
Ooh.
Several reporters stood near him as a backhoe clawed through the earth at Linden Hill Cemetery in Frederick, Maryland on June 2nd, 1994. A forensic pathologist, James Starrs of George Washington University Law School, spent over a month studying Olsen's body. When it was finished, he called a news conference.
Maybe this is what the dwarves were singing about in our last episode. A war ending in 1994.
Oh, maybe. I didn't think of that. I forgot all about
dwarves?
that.
Gnomes. Was it really
It was
gnomes?
like
Thank
gnomes.
you.
When he was finished, he called a news conference. His tests for toxins in the body, he reported, had turned up absolutely nothing. The wound pattern, however, though, was curious. Starrs had found no glass shards on the victim's head or neck, as might be expected if he had dived through the window. Most intriguing.
Wouldn't they clean that up during an autopsy, though?
Why
would they leave
not the
glass
wounds,
in your skin?
not the like glass shards.
I would think they would.
I feel like your skin would have been damaged from diving through a window. Like it would have been bad. Like there would have been telltale signs.
I'm just saying that.
I'm sure that they probably would have taken glass out.
Yeah, that's why there wouldn't be any.
He was
remaining.
in a closed. It was a closed coffin.
I get that
funeral.
But I would understand why there's no glass shards left, because I would imagine that would be taken out during an autopsy.
But I feel like there would have been traces that you dove through a plate glass
100%,
window.
yeah. Not just an impact from the...
Starrs had found no glass shards on the victim's head or neck, as might be expected if he had dived through a window. Most intriguingly, although Olsen had reportedly landed on his back, the skull above his left eye was disfigured. He went on to say, quote, I would venture to say that this hematoma is a singular event of the possibility that Dr. Olsen was struck a stunning blow to his head by some person or instrument prior to his exiting through the window of room 1018A.
Could explain why he landed on his back, too.
Yeah. Starrs concluded. Later, he was more emphatic, saying, quote, I 100% think Frank Olsen was intentionally, deliberately, with malice of forethought thrown out that window. Because Olson survivors had signed away their right to legal relief when they accepted the $750,000 compensation payment in 1975, they could not again sue the CIA. Although Starr's report and other discoveries sharpened Eric's already powerful suspicion that foul play had laid behind his father's death, he could not prove it. Recognizing that painful fact, he and his brother decided it was finally time to reinter their father's body. On August 8, 2002, the day before the reburial, he called reporters to his home and announced that he had reached a new conclusion about what had happened to his father. He declared, quote, "The death of Frank Olson on November 28, 1953 was murder, not suicide. This is not an LSD drug experiment story as it was represented in 1975. This is a biological warfare story. Frank Olson did not die because he was an experimental guinea pig who experienced a bad trip. He died because of concern that he would divulge information concerning a highly classified CIA interrogation program in the 50s and concerning the use of biological weapons by the United States in the Korean War."
Even though they couldn't pursue legal action anymore, at least they can expose what happened.
Yeah, and they can expose like the truth of what happened to their father. In 2017, Stephen Sirocco, a retired New York assistant DA who had investigated the Olson case and remained interested in it, made his first trip to the hotel room where Olson spent his first night. Looking around the room, Sirocco said, raised the question of how Olson could have actually done it. He said, quote, "If this would have been a suicide, it would have been very difficult to accomplish. There was motive to kill him. He knew the deepest, darkest secrets of the Cold War. Would the American government kill an American citizen who was a scientist, who was working for the CIA and the Army, if they thought he was a security risk? There are people who say definitely." So I 100
says yes.
I 100% think that Frank Olson was hit over the head in the room and then thrown out the window.
It was not a psychotic episode or an LSD trip.
Yeah. So that's what I got for Frank Olson. And again, that was a lot, but
That's
I feel like that's a super important story to show A, what these top secret programs do, and B, the links that the government will go to cover up what they do. You know, like I can't imagine.
Just imagine the stuff we don't know about.
And this is the only, because of the Frank Olson stuff is the reason that we know what we do about MK Ultra, because the reports were all destroyed. So God knows what else they tested.
I wonder if the Jason Bourne franchise was inspired by MK Ultra.
I don't know.
There's not a lot about assassins coming out of this, but I wonder if there was another program.
But that's kind of what I get into here now a little bit.
Okay.
But what else was tested on?
Right.
You know, I've talked about it on here. I have that really weird memory in my head. Years ago, there's a woman that's like big into the conspiracy stuff, like the huge, crazy stuff. And her and I used to write back and forth. And I told her, I have this weird memory when I was young, being in like a white room, like a lab room, and there was an Asian looking woman in a lab coat, and she was giving me Fruit Loops if I would answer questions correctly. And
this isn't a dream?
No, and I always thought this was them testing.
Tell Corey?
I think so.
Okay.
But when I went into I remember
testing your IQ
I remember telling the story when I went into kindergarten. Like they told the principal that I could already read in an advanced level, and the principal didn't believe them, so he gave me his principal's journal, and I read word for word. And he was like floored that he said at that point I read at above a 6th grade level. So part of me wonders if this was me getting tested for that. But then the girl I was talking to said it wouldn't have been a person in a lab coat giving you Fruit Loops. So I don't know. I have this weird memory that it's like, was something done to me? Like, I don't know. Was I tested for something? But there was probably so many situations like that where people were tested that we don't know about, and what was done to these people, you know? So now I kind of get into the Manchurian Candidate stuff. Okay. This got its name from the well-known 1962 psychological thriller film directed and produced by John Frankenheimer, based on the 1959 Richard Condon novel. It's basically the idea of someone being programmed to kill someone without realizing they're doing it. Have you ever seen the old Manchurian Candidate?
No, I think I've only seen... Is that Matt Damon in the new one, too?
I don't remember. No, wasn't it Denzel Washington?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. The original one from 1962 is really good, and it's really... well, like disturbing. You know, like the beginning scene with the flower, the garden group, like the garden, like this guy is Frank Sinatra was in it. Like he's sitting with these old ladies at this gardening meeting, and it turns out that it's really like soldiers, and he's killing them. He's like programmed to kill them, so they're testing out his, you know, and like whenever he sees the Queen of Hearts, that's like his signal to go into assassin mode. It's a really good movie. And Angela Lansbury is his mom in the movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so good. We had to watch it for film class in college. So does this have any basis in reality? According to the CIA, historians had asserted that creating a Manchurian candidate subject through mind control techniques was a goal of the MKUltra and related CIA projects, which is crazy. So this comes from the Smithsonian Magazine, May 22nd, 2017 article called, quote, "The True Story of Brainwashing and How It Shaped America." And this is kind of like how they got into this whole idea of soldiers, like programming a soldier's mind. When he was shot down over Korea and captured in 1952, Colonel Frank Schwabel was the highest-ranking military official to ever meet that fate. And by February 1953, he and other prisoners of war had falsely confessed to using germ warfare against the Koreans, dropping everything from anthrax to the plague on unsuspecting civilians. The American public was shocked and grew even more so when 5,000 of the 7,200 POWs either petitioned the U.S. government to end the war or signed confessions of their alleged crimes. The final blow came when 21 American prisoner of war soldiers refused to come back to America. That's so weird. Suddenly, the threat of brainwashing was very real, and it was everywhere. The U.S. military denied the charges made in the soldiers' quote confessions.
But was it true?
That's the thing. We don't know. But they couldn't explain how they'd been coerced to make them. What could explain the behavior of these soldiers other than brainwashing? The idea of mind control flourished in pop culture with movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Manchurian Candidate, showing people whose minds were wiped and controlled by outside forces. Had Chinese and Soviet communists really uncovered a machine or method to rewrite men's minds and supplant their free will? The short answer is no, but that didn't stop the U.S. from pouring resources into combating it. Timothy Melly, professor of English at Miami University and author of The Covert Sphere, Secrecy, Fiction, and the National Security State, says, quote, "The basic problem that brainwashing is designed to address is the question, why would anybody become a communist? Brainwashing is a story that we tell to explain something that we can't otherwise explain." The term had multiple definitions that changed depending on who used it. For Hunter, who turned out to be an agent in the CIA's propaganda wing, it was a mystical Oriental practice that couldn't be understood or anticipated by the West. But for scientists who actually studied the American POWs once they returned from Korea, brainwashing was altogether less mysterious than the readily apparent outcome. What do you think the readily apparent outcome was? It wasn't brainwashing. What was it? It was straight up torture. That's why they were tortured so badly that they denounced the United States. It wasn't so much brainwashing. It was just they were tortured. Like,
right. You can only go so far before you break.
Yeah. Yep. Robert J. Lifton, one of the psychiatrists who worked with the veterans and later studied doctors who aided Nazi war crimes, listed 8 criteria for thought reform. They included things like milieu control, which is having absolute power over the individual's surroundings, and confession, in which individuals are forced to confess to crimes repeatedly, even if they're not true. For the American soldiers trapped in the Korean prison camps, brainwashing meant forced standing, deprivation of food and sleep, solitary confinement, and constant repeated exposure to communist propaganda. Marcia Holmes, a science historian at the University of London's Hidden Persuaders project, stated, quote, "They're not sleeper agents, they're just extremely traumatized." So 100%. This resulted in the...
you will agree to or admit
anything,
to
absolutely anything.
Yeah.
But we were convinced that it was mind control.
Yeah.
But what's the line between brainwashing and trauma induced thoughts?
Do they truly believe what they're saying, or are they just saying it to end the torture?
This resulted in the Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape Program, or SERE, meant to inoculate soldiers against future attempts at psychological torture by using those same torture techniques in their training. Despite MKUltra violating many ethical norms for human experimentation, the legacy of brainwashing experiments continued to live on in U.S. policy. The same methods that had once been used against American soldiers then ended up being used to extract information from terrorists in places such as Iraq and Guantanamo Bay. So basically, we're using we're doing what was used on us during like the Korean War, so they're studying basically how to best torture someone to get information. It's not so much mind control as it is, like I said, straight up torture.
And not really thinking about the fact that the information you're getting might not even be true. They're just saying what they want, what you want them to say.
But government was so convinced at the time that this was just mind control that they began studying how to do mind control.
So crazy.
And here's an example of what people went through when this stuff was being studied. And this is crazy. This comes from two sources. The December 14th, 2021 article from the Canadian Encyclopedia called, quote, The Montreal MKUltra Experiments, and an October 21st, 2020 CBC article called, quote, Brainwashed, The Echoes of MKUltra. This is rough. This you would probably not want Strangelings listen to. But the Montreal MKUltra experiments were insane. It was just as bad as what we were doing, if not worse. Between 1957 and 1964, although possibly beginning as early as 1948, psychiatric experiments were conducted at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, a psychiatric teaching hospital affiliated with McGill University. Scottish-American psychiatrist Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron led and conducted these experiments. The program is widely believed to have been partly funded by the United States CIA as part of their top-secret MKUltra program. The Canadian government also helped fund the project. The experiment's purpose was originally and officially listed as an effort to find a cure for schizophrenia. However, in reality, the project conducted illegal human experimentation to determine whether drugs and psychological techniques could be used for the purposes of mind control. Officially, neither the United States nor Canada has admitted to being responsible for these experiments. Survivors have attempted to receive compensation with little success.
Well, they'd have to admit to doing something wrong.
Esther, is that Esther or Esther? Esther.
Esther.
Esther Schreier was a patient at Montreal's Allen Memorial Institute in the 1960s. She was pregnant and had gone to the Allen, as the hospital is called.
I already hate this.
This is rough. Yeah, Esther Schreier was a patient at Montreal's Allen Memorial Institute in the 60s. She was pregnant and had gone to the Allen, as the hospital is known, to seek treatment for what today would be considered anxiety or postpartum depression after the birth of her previous child. So that's all.
And she was still pregnant.
Yeah, she was pregnant with a new child, but she was experiencing anxiety and postpartum depression because of her first child. But once she walked through those hospital doors and into the care of psychiatrist named Dr. Ewan Cameron, she became an unwitting experiment subject for a massive CIA brainwashing operation codenamed MKUltra. Schreier is now 60 years old, semi-retired, living in Toronto, and is still fighting to be recognized as an experiment victim. 3 years after the CIA launched MKUltra, they approached Cameron through the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, which was a research foundation and one of the front organizations through which the CIA funneled money. They encouraged him to apply for a grant, which he did and quickly received. From January 1957 to September 1960, the United States CIA gave Cameron $60,000, equivalent then to slightly more than $500,000. So they're paying him to do these MKUltra tests. Esther entered the hospital in February 1960 to receive what she and her family thought was the best care that money could buy. But her medical notes showed disregard for her well-being and that of her unborn child right from the start. She spent 30 days in what was called the, quote, sleep room, a place where patients were put in a drug-induced coma and woken only for 3 feedings and bathroom breaks per day. She lost 13 pounds that month. Her records showed that she couldn't stand up because she was so weak. This is nuts here. She also underwent a treatment called, quote, depatterning. Cameron believed that breaking down a patient's mind to a childlike state through drugs and electroshock therapy would allow him to work from a clean slate where then he could reprogram the patients. This would involve what he called, quote, psychic driving. Psychic driving involved forcing patients to listen to tape messages played on a loop. Patients were immobilized and sedated, and often underwent this treatment for as long as 16 hours each day. Messages might be repeated for literally hundreds of thousands of times. Typically, a patient would endure 10 days of negative messages, often attacking a perceived personality problem. This was then followed by 10 days of positive messages. These voices were played through headphones, helmets, or speakers, sometimes installed right inside a patient's pillow. Psychic driving involved other highly experimental treatments like placing patients in a drug-induced coma. This practice was often done for much longer than they anticipated. One case is said to have lasted as long as 86 days. In some instances, the patients would also be given large doses of psychotropic drugs such as LSD. In other cases, patients were subjected to electroshock therapy up to 75 times the normal intensity. In some cases, both the drugs and electroshock therapy were used at the same time. It was just like for some of these people, they would inject in their right arm barbiturates to make them sleepy and inject amphetamines in their other arm to keep them in a completely disoriented state.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Just an utter disregard for human life.
Yep. On top of all of this, some patients were also put into a sensory deprivation environment. This would have the effect of numbing basic senses like sight, smell, and hearing. The method would also include limiting patients' food and water consumption. Powerful sedatives were also used in high quantities to keep patients sedated. Patients were made to be as helpless as infants. They were unable to stand, walk, or in many cases, control their bowels. It's so bad. By March 12, 1960, Esther's medical records stated that she was, quote, considered completely depatterned. She was incontinent, mute, and had trouble swallowing. They would let her rest for 4 or 5 days and then resume treatments. Cameron's notes say that on August 17, 1960, 6 months after she entered the Allen, she had 29 electroshock treatments, with most of them of the extreme variety he was using. But now, because she was, quote, in her 8th month of pregnancy, the treatment stopped. How nice of them.
Yeah.
On October 27, 1960, her son Lloyd was born, and Esther said that she felt helpless. She couldn't remember basic life functions, let alone how to take care of a newborn. With all of these methods proving seemingly not as successful as they had hoped, they started to look at the next possible generation of controlling the mind. So it's crazy. Like, her son said he kind of has problems.
I
he
can
thinks
imagine.
because of all these things that were done to his mom when she was pregnant with him.
Just the stress that she would have been under would have impacted him, let alone the chemicals.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is when you think of mind control stuff, you think of a person being knocked out on drugs and having this tape loop of whatever pattern they wanted. It's one of the other articles said some of these people were subjected to these tape loops over 500,000 times.
Oh my gosh.
And they would speed them up. They would slow them down to disorient you. It was just insane, the stuff that they did to these people. So that's Esther's story. It's so sad.
Yeah.
It's a really good article, but it's dark stuff to read. So now they started to look at the next possible generation of controlling the mind. This is your next story. So what do you think? I mean, obviously, they're working on psychological stuff to control the mind, but now they're looking at technological stuff to control a person's mind. So here you go.
From the July 17th, 2019 New Scientist article titled, quote, Elon Musk's plans for mind-controlled gadgets, what we know so far. I mean, that right there is just disturbing. This is pretty short, actually. It's like half a page. Elon Musk's brain-computer interface company, Neuralink, has finally broken its silence. Since the company was formed in 2016, it has kept its plans secret, but in a presentation on Tuesday night, it showed off its vision and explained what the firm has done so far. At the event, the company unveiled a brain-computer interface, a technology that allows machines to read brain activity. Neuralink says its device will have about 3,000 surgically implanted electrodes, each of which will be able to monitor some 1,000 neurons at a time. The electrodes will be embedded in around 100 extremely thin threads between 4 and 6 micrometers wide, which is much less the width of a hair. The threads collect the measurements from the electrodes and will be connected to hardware through a small incision behind the ear, which will use Bluetooth to send the information to a smartphone app.
That's so...
Like, why?
Well, Well, wait, I'll wait till you're done with the
Okay,
article.
Neuralink says the interface could be used for everything from helping people with that is
100,
what I thought of.
Yes,
yeah,
100%.
people with paralysis to control prosthesis to allowing people to directly interact with artificial intelligence. This is going to sound pretty weird, but we hope to achieve a sort of symbiosis with artificial intelligence, said Musk
Scary,
at the event.
That's, yeah.
And in January of this year, Elon Musk said the first human received an implant from the brain chip startup and is recovering well.
So I get it. I get that it would be great to help someone with paralysis be able to do something with their mind. But the thing is, like, if your mind is able to control this device, what's the reverse of that? They're going to work on devices to control a person's thoughts, which is frightening as hell.
Well, it's just the idea of those weird, we talked about this, how subliminal ads that are like coming in through people's, what was that about? Do you remember?
Was that the billboard where the billboard like directed?
Yeah, directly
like when you were
you.
walking below, you would hear like somebody whispering in your ear when it was actually the billboard sending a sound wave down, like a laser focused sound down.
Yes,
and
that's creepy.
Yeah.
Now we're implanting stuff in people's brains.
And I get that the idea is good. I mean, somebody paralysis.
That's how they're selling it.
That's how they're selling it. But then the reverse is true, that these apps or these devices are going to be able to reprogram your mind or affect your mind, which is frightening. And when you mix that with AI, that's like so we've kind of gone from psychological mind control through MK Ultra to technological mind control. So that's kind of
terrifying.
MK Ultra, yeah. So have they created a Manchurian candidate? This is something that we're going to look at more in individual cases. Like we need to do an RFK, like what the assassination of Robert Kennedy, because there's a lot of sketchy stuff with there that almost seems like mind control stuff. But we're going to look into that more in individual cases. Do you think that we ever programmed somebody?
I feel like there's all these movies and books about it. The idea has to have come from somewhere.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's probably highly possible.
The only one that I'm going to look at here now, because there's not a lot about it, but this one fascinates me because I actually saw this live when this was happening on TV. And even then I was like, huh? I'm like, that's really weird. So I will say that one situation that kind of piques my interest I saw happen as it aired. This article comes from the kind of wackadoo site called Cutting Edge, and it gets wackadoo.
Okay.
The article says, quote, on Wednesday, October 23rd, 2002, at a televised news briefing called so that authorities could release information on 2 people being sought for questioning in the 13 Washington, D.C. sniper shootings. Like, I watched this press conference as it aired. The last cryptic message from Montgomery County Police Chief, I don't remember if it was Washington, D.C. or Washington State. Was it Washington, D.C.?
I think it was
the
D.C.,
sniper shootings?
D.C. sniper.
Yeah. The last cryptic message from Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose to the Washington area sniper on the press conference were the words, quote, you have indicated that you want us to do and say certain things. You asked us to say, we have caught the sniper like a duck in a noose. We understand that hearing us say this is important to you. And when I was watching a press conference and he said that, I was like,
what?
I was like, that's almost like a trigger phrase for an assassin.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The article goes on to say, quote, nothing, and I repeat, nothing, demonstrates the Illuminati hand behind the shooting spree more than the halting, clumsy manner in which Police Chief Moose delivered the final mind control message to the shooter that the time had come to give himself up. Surely the Illuminati could have found someone to deliver this message through the media that would understand he was passing the message and give it a smooth manner that would not seem quite so obvious. When Chief Moose said this phrase, he had given away the inside truth to anyone who understands the Illuminati and their mind control. Again, this is crazy, but the gist of it, I kind of agree with. Let us explain. To create a trained assassin, the alters, which are mind control slaves, commonly called deltas, are desensitized towards pain and death by being shown constant gory films. Hypnosis is also used. The potential victims are devalued. Satanic rituals are also involved in the creation of the deltas. Deltas will be trained in hand-to-hand combat and know the vulnerable places to instantly kill people. Training includes a great deal of expert weapons training. When the programmer wants to use these Delta alters, he will call them up from wherever the signal is hidden deep within the mind. The Delta will be commanded to, quote, melt. When they have melted into the nothing state, then the programmer gives an exact script of everything the Delta alter is to do, just like you would program a computer step by step. For instance, the programmer might say, quote, at a certain place, you will be in the melted state until you hear the phrase, quote, I'm going to Kansas City. Where are you from, Miss Ruby Shoes? At that point, you will then do part B of the script. Whether these two men are the snipers, they certainly are MK Ultra mind-controlled Delta alters. This programming code demonstrates that. For the sake of argument, let's assume these two men are indeed the snipers. They would have started as assassin deltas many years ago. Using sophisticated mind control and torture techniques, these men would have been trained to be a, quote, person within another person. They would have been trained to do whatever their handlers and their upper-level programmers want them to do. Scripting is often buried in fairy tales or legends, and some common sources used in scripting are The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, Disney movies, and fairy tales. In this instance, the Delta alters were undoubtedly given the instruction that when they heard the words, quote, we have caught the sniper like a duck in a noose, they were going to go into their melted mind state and then go to sleep at a prearranged place, thus allowing themselves to be caught by the police, as the police had been told exactly who they were, what car they were driving, and where they could be found. The sniper's crime spree came to a close at 3:15 a.m. on October 24th, when Muhammad and Malvo were found sleeping in their car at a rest stop off Interstate 70 near Myersville, Maryland, and were arrested on federal weapons charges, which is weird. Like, when I first heard that, I wasn't even, like, super into this stuff. I'm like, that sounds like some kind of weird trigger phrase or, like, a code phrase. So a lot of people think that that phrase shut down these snipers' assassin personalities and made them go to sleep and get caught. And it's crazy to think of that, but it was, that whole press conference was, that phrase, duck in a noose, was so weird.
Yeah.
And that has a basis in a Native American fairy tale, like a legend, which is something that, if you buy this idea, and this, we'll get into this more with Project Monarch, and that's, like I said, the super sketchy idea of creating sex slaves, that you're using Alice in Wonderland symbolism or Disney symbolism to erase a person's mind and to build a new personality in that person. And this is super crazy stuff, but at the same time, some of this stuff is crazy. But American historian Alfred McCoy has claimed that the CIA attempt to focus media attention on these sorts of crazy programs is done so that the public would not look at the research's primary goal, which was just effective methods of torture and interrogation. You know, so it's disinformation. They kind of want you to think MK Ultra is crazy stuff, so you don't really look at it a lot more to realize what it's really doing. So as far as if someone can be reprogrammed to be an assassin or a sex slave or whatever, I don't know. I really don't know. I've read books by people who claim to have been Project Monarch. And again, Project Monarch we'll get to in a side session because that one's very not safe for work. But some of the stuff that is in these books is just flat out crazy, you know. And is it true? Is it not? Can someone be programmed with an alternate personality that becomes an assassin? I don't know.
It reminds me of a Dean Koontz book I read.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what book I'm talking
yes, I do.
about?
Yep.
Where a psychiatrist uses a trigger word and turns a woman into a sex slave.
Did we do that on the book club? No?
I don't think so.
But I might have read that book.
Yeah.
But
he used hypnosis, like a couple years of hypnosis sessions to get her there.
Yep.
But it was wild.
Yeah.
And scary.
So do you think that is actually possible to do that?
Because I feel like people always say under hypnosis you would still never do anything that's not
hypnosis
outside of your personality.
Is very misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know,
also scary.
And scary, very scary. I told you my whole story about hypnotism when I was with the psychology club in high school, where I freaked out like super badly getting hypnotized. Meditating was cool. Like, I loved doing the meditation, but the hypnosis was like one of the times in my life where I legitimately freaked out.
Yeah.
like in the
wouldn't
middle
like
of it, and it's weird.
It's interesting that hypnosis has never been mentioned in any of this. Like, isn't
Yeah.
that a much more like or I don't know,
We
ethical
mentioned
way
it a couple
to try
times,
this?
but they did try hypnosis a couple times, but
Yeah.
you know, it was probably thrown in with electroshock therapy and drugs
Yeah.
and hypnosis in order to do that. But as to whether or not we can create
I don't know.
another, like if I said,
I think it would be really hard to do successfully.
Yeah.
I think you're more prone to completely messing someone up and they're useless.
to the point where if I was with you and I said the word steak a burrito to you, you would like you would switch to a different you would switch to a different personality and become an assassin. Like
no.
I don't know. But there's stuff with Saran and the RFK assassination that's kind of that delves into MK Ultra and stuff like that. So we'll get more into those.
Yeah.
And again, the Monarch stuff I want to do more on a side session because that's not for young listeners because that's very sketchy and very explicit. And the Tavistock Institute I'm super intrigued by, but I need to do way more research on that. But, you know, in a nutshell, the Tavistock, like in conspiracy circles, people think the Tavistock Institute does large scale behavior modification, not so much mind control. But we talked about this on Brian's podcast. Like I brought up how supermarkets are designed in a way that manipulates you.
The colors, the
way
things
we
are
placed. We
placed.
talked about the children's cereal boxes having
At
the
eye
mascots
level.
having like looking down.
Oh,
so
at
it's
the kids,
so it's
yeah.
looking at the kids, so it forms a connection with the children.
Yeah.
And how
crazy
how
what goes into
smells
that.
are given out throughout the store that make you want to. So it's very behavior. It's behavior modification. And people think that's what the Tavistock Institute does, is that basically they manipulate the news to get people to believe what they want them to believe. So it's really fascinating, but I need to delve more into the Tavistock Institute before we talk about them. But that's kind of the same thing. It's mind control on a less intrusive scale, which is done all the time. Advertisement is mind control.
It is. I
you
agree.
know? So there you go. There's MK Ultra.
By the way, it's the Cecil Hotel.
Cecil Hotel. Thank you. So what do you think of
It
MK
occurred
Ultra?
to me like halfway through. Freaky.
What time are we looking at?
We're just under 2 hours.
Okay, cool. It's super freaky.
Yeah.
The Frank Olson
Disturbing.
stuff I know we went into a lot, but I feel like that's really, really important for people to know.
It's probably one of the few examples we have of like really specific things that happen to a specific person.
Yeah.
Everything else is
That
just
the government
generalized.
was trying to cover up.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't think they ever came out and said he was murdered, but he was 100% murdered.
Yeah.
He was clonked over the head and thrown out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if he was
Ooh, I just had really weird deja vu. I
Oh.
don't know why.
especially if they were afraid that he was going to start talking about what he had done and seen.
And MK Ultra at that time was a super duper top secret
Mm-hmm.
Ultra. It was named Ultra because that's classification. Like that's an above top secret. There's secret, top secret, and then Ultra was like above that. So that's why it was because
Okay.
they wanted nobody to know that.
Do you ever wonder why?
But yeah, so all in all, MK Ultra was a lot about interrogation, like getting somebody to confess to stuff. But offshoots of it did look at mind control because we were worried that other countries were doing this and we wanted to be like them.
Ahead
But
of
the
the
stuff,
game. Yeah.
the Canada stuff was truly like this woman with postpartum
Yeah, that's
depression,
insane.
like what they did to her and how that affected her.
Yeah.
And she got no compensation for this. She's still trying to get recognized as an experimental subject. So it's just crazy. So that's some dark stuff, you guys.
Yeah.
But we always talk about MK Ultra on here, and it gets the misconception is that it's creating alternate personalities, which might be a part of it.
Sure.
But there's a lot more to it than just that. It's crazy stuff and dark stuff. And it feels dirty just talking about it.
Yeah, it does.
But it is stuff we did. It's not so much a conspiracy theory. It is stuff we flat out did.
Yeah.
And God knows what other experiments we did.
Right.
What else we did to
What
people,
other
because what we
programs.
only know is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree.
So there you go. MK Ultra. Ooh, song
Happy
choices?
sunshine.
Yeah.
No, nothing for me.
Okay, I got two.
Okay.
My first song choice, again, I am just enamored with this girl. I've talked about her a couple episodes ago. Clario. Or Claro. Her name is Claire. She goes by Claro. So this song, I'm just going to say off at the start, is by Muramasa, who I think is almost like a techno dancey kind of person.
I love how you did a little dance.
That was my little dance. But this is Muramasa and Claro, and the song is called "I Don't Think I Can Do This Again." This is currently my favorite song. There is something about Claire's voice that, like, every now and then there's somebody that sings that just hits that spot in me where it just like makes me shiver. Like I just love her voice. I can't have a crush on her because she's in her mid-20s, but she literally looks like she's 15 and she looks like students that I worked with at school. So no crush on her, but I just adore this girl. Like I badly want to go to lunch with her. So Claire, if you're listening, call our phone line. I'll take you to Applebee's or something.
Applebee's.
Well, I don't know where else to go.
I could give you 100 other suggestions in Applebee's.
Here are some of the YouTube comments under the song. Somebody writes, quote, "This is the greatest integration of soft indie rock and EDM that I've ever heard." Somebody else writes, "Claro is that girl in your biology class that always gives you cute looks during class, but she's dating some guy that kind of looks like your dad." And under that, somebody responded, "This is like strangely specific, dude. Are you okay?"
I was just going to say it's weirdly specific.
Somebody else writes, quote, "I went from not knowing who Claro was to being head over heels in love with her in the first 5 seconds of this video." And somebody else writes, "Claro's voice is my happy place." Like, I love her voice. I adore this girl. So my first song choice is "I Don't Think I Can Do This Again" by Muramasa and Claro. My second one is a flat out new crush of mine. So this showed up in one of my suggested videos. I will say that the singer's name is Tatum Langley, but that's only like half the story of this song. So under this song, people wrote, quote, "I went to high school with Tatum. Such a talented, funny, and sweet person. I'm so shocked to see her here. Glad she's getting so much recognition, and I wish nothing but more success for her." And there's a lot of people that wrote this. And when when people get all these comments that are like, "I knew this person in high school and they were like an absolute sweetheart," that makes me like them even more. That's just a genuinely good person. Somebody else under this song writes, quote, "Wow, I want to hear this play in fancy restaurants and coffee shops now." Somebody else writes, quote, "Oh my God, this cover is absolutely beautiful." Somebody else writes, quote, "I am now crushing on Tatum Langley." I hear you, because I am too. Somebody else writes, "Throughout the video, my gaze was riveted to her face. She is so beautiful and charismatic. Oh my God." And then somebody else writes, quote, "I'm a huge fan of punk rock and old-timey music, so seeing one of my favorite band's songs in this style makes me so happy." And we've had another song by them. This is Postmodern Jukebox. I love Postmodern Jukebox.
Do you watch their YouTube videos?
Yes, a lot. They take like popular songs and make them like swing versions and stuff. And this showed up. I've never seen this one before, but when I started watching it, I was like, oh my God, I'm in love with this girl. And then like 20 seconds into the song, she does this little sway thing with her hips. And I'm like, oh my God, I am in love with this girl. So this one is Postmodern Jukebox's swinging version of Green Day's song Basket Case, featuring Tatum Langley. She is so, like, you can tell that she's like a theater person because when she's singing, her face is so expressive. Like, she does such a good job in this song, and I love this version of the song. It is Postmodern Jukebox's version of Green Day's Basket Case featuring Tatum Langley.
Nice.
So good. Those are my two songs. We didn't get a new question. Are there any questions?
I'll do a joke.
Okay. Let's answer a question. We have to answer a question.
What is it? Do you have a question?
Somebody did ask me recently how long we think we can go with the podcast.
Oh.
Because somebody asked me, I don't remember who it was. They asked me how many years we've been doing it, and I told them, and they're like, "Dang!" They're like,
"Wasn't it 2017 is when we started?"
Yeah. Somebody asked how many seasons or how long we think we can go.
And I think the first year we did 2 seasons or something.
Yeah, because we didn't have a plan. At
Yeah,
the time. We didn't know what we were doing. But they asked me how long or how many seasons we think we can do this. I think I know we can do at least 10 seasons. That's only 2 seasons.
Yeah, we're only on season 8.
Yeah, that's only 2 seasons after this. So I know I think we could keep doing this until we decided not to.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to when it feels like work. I mean, it kind of feels like work sometimes, just the editing.
Yeah.
But when it's no longer fun for us, And it's
I
something
thought about
we
it.
don't look forward
I
to.
thought about it yesterday. It's like, what would I do in my early mornings now when I don't research for the podcast? That's my morning is getting up and researching for the podcast. I know we have at least 2 more seasons that I'm not going to worry about. We have so many states left we can do.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
not worried about content in any way, shape, or form.
No.
It's going to be, are we still into it or not?
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you move or one of us moves too far away,
Right.
in which case we'd go to
Skype
for a little while, but maybe we wouldn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. But I love doing this.
I don't want to quantify it because I
Yeah.
really have no idea.
Yeah.
I could see us doing it for 10 more years.
Yeah.
I don't know. It
I
just
love
depends
doing this.
on where we
I
are.
really do. And that's not so much. I mean, I love this, but I love the people that love us.
Our
you know, like
community.
Dr. Joe, when she joined the Strangers, she was like, oh my God, she's like, you have such a good community because that's what they want with their Felicity podcast. You know, they said she wants that level of just, you know, like I love that somebody will post something and then strangers will carry on the discussion after it. You know, like we don't even have to jump in there.
It's all so supportive.
It is like I am
positive.
floored by how amazing.
It's one of the rare spaces online.
Yeah, like we have such a good community
do.
of listeners, which just floors me, and that's why I love doing this. You know, I love talking about this stuff. I love seeing you because we wouldn't see each other really otherwise. But I love
Unless
doing
we were
this.
doing investigations.
I love doing this, knowing that we're making somebody's day better by letting them listen to us babble about piles of dead monkeys and whatnot. And we have not done a pickle joke in forever.
No, we haven't. So it's
and the
throwback.
world is supposed to end Monday. Don't forget with
the
the eclipse and the earthquake.
Yeah, we're gonna have like 80% cover.
Yeah.
in
My
the
friend
eclipse.
Maddie.
It's supposed to be storming too.
Yeah, my friend. Oh, seriously?
Yeah, it's supposed to rain.
My friend Maddie
I mean,
wants.
we'll still be able. The darkness will still be a thing, but
My friend Maddie wants us to go geocaching that day, so I might be
Ooh.
out geocaching when the sun. But we're not in the path of totality. It's only like a little bit here that's supposed to. But people are saying because of the earthquake yesterday, I went off
in New
kind of on
York?
Brian Young's podcast that there was a time when I kind of liked being a conspiracy theorist, but just lately it's just bad. Like the whole like everything's a conspiracy. This bridge thing where it was a demolition. There were explosives. It's like I don't like being labeled in with that group anymore.
No.
Where there was a time I did where it was fun. But it's not fun anymore because it's so politicized.
yeah, that's true. Oh, and that earthquake in Taiwan, that was crazy.
The earthquake in New York.
Well, the New York one was only a 4 point, which I realized
was the
is
one
a
in
lot.
Taiwan?
Like 7.5.
When did this happen?
A couple days ago.
Maybe the world
crazy.
is going to end Monday.
I don't know.
Good for it. It's had its run.
Alrighty, you ready?
Yep.
What's green, has 22 legs, and plays football in cold weather?
I think we did this already. The Green Bay Pickles.
Did we go through this whole book
Not whole
already?
book. I think.
Well, that's literally like the end.
Here, I'll find one. I don't think we did. But you have to
Okay.
read it because that's your thing.
I'll
There's
keep the spectacles on then.
We've heard that one. It's so dumb.
Yeah, we did read this. I think we've done this whole book, and that's why we stopped reading them. Why did the pickle wear red suspenders?
Why?
The blue ones broke. And there's a picture.
Maybe. I think Eric Orheim.
Yeah, I feel like we did get through all of these because I went to the last one and I'm like, why does this sound familiar?
We could restart with. No. Oh, she just gave me a look.
Where is that joke book that
I don't know.
was
Is
it
it on the
Brad's
bookshelf?
son? Wasn't that?
Oh, I
was
think
that
that's at
Brad
home.
Medeiros?
I think that's at home.
Okay, well maybe bring that.
I should.
Wasn't that Brad Medeiros'
Yeah. Yeah.
kiddo
Yep.
who sent us that?
Yes, I will bring that. It's at home on my bookshelf.
Is his name Eli? Am I just
I think
making
it's
stuff
Eli.
up?
I think it is Eli.
Okay.
But we did all the pickle jokes.
Brad, do the podcast that you're talking about doing. The Bigfoot and Cryptid podcast.
I think you could do a once a month. I think there's so many cryptids.
Did he stop? This is the...
Killing, missing, hidden.
Thank you.
I
Because
think
I always
so.
say killing, hidden, missing.
I think it got to be too much.
That's what I was going to say. Because he was a lawyer. Is he still a lawyer? And I think it was
think so.
just...
Brad, let
it was
us know.
impacting his health, I thought.
I know we got a threatening
He had-
voicemail from him about not doing
He did.
his
He had quite a following. And we often
we
got new
listeners
listeners
because
from
of
him.
him.
Yeah.
I'm
And
still floored at Tennessee. Like, how did we get?
I don't know.
Isn't he from down south?
I think so.
Maybe he's spreading the word in Tennessee.
Maybe. If you're in Tennessee, give us a shout out.
Yeah, like I love Tennessee, New York. too.
Mm-hmm.
California's got so many people.
Yeah, it's
Wisconsin was like fourth on. I thought Wisconsin would be higher.
Yeah. Way to go, Wisconsin.
Darn Scotties. We have some fun stuff coming up now in the side sessions.
Cool. I'm excited about that.
Yep. It's going to be 25 unique travel destinations around the country. And Wisconsin shows up on there, of course. I didn't do the House on the Rock because you talked about the House on the Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple people mentioned the House on the Rock to us.
Mm-hmm.
I need to visit that place.
It's so good. I would love to go back again. It's hard to take it all in.
We do a live show from there.
It took us 3 hours.
Seriously?
Yeah. And we got there right when they opened. So we almost had the place to ourselves. It's a lot longer when there's a ton of people
I
there.
thought it was smaller than that.
Oh, no.
Dang.
And there were sections that we didn't spend a lot of time in, too. So
I need to go there. Maybe a road trip at some point when I have a reliable car. So I think that's it for this episode. So our deets, I almost forgot the deets. You can email us at thestrangesessions@gmail.com. We are on Instagram at the Strange Sessions.
The Stained Sessions.
The Stained Sessions, where Krista does a great job. I love all of our Instagram listeners. You can send postcards and snail mail to The Strange Sessions, P.O. Box 434, Manitowoc, Wisconsin 54221-0434. You can call our lonely phone line. Claire, give me a call. I want to go to Applebee's with you. 920-443-9602. I haven't been to Applebee's in forever, actually. I was like floored yesterday or the day before. My aunt gave me, because I'm so broke, my aunt gave me at Christmas, she gave me gift cards for Subway. So I went to Subway and it was $12 for a footlong. It used to be $5 footlong. That used to be their thing.
Well, that was always a special, I thought, though.
But it's like, oh my God, $12. And you can tell, like, they're still a foot long, but they're skinnier than it used to be. Like, places are getting so...
I'm more of a Jimmy John's person now, so
Jimmy
I haven't
John's
eaten at Subway in a long time.
Good.
I love Jimmy John's.
I need to try...
Love their bread.
What's the place down here? Firehouse? Herbert's and Gerbert's?
Nope. Jersey Mike's.
Jersey Mike's. I want to try Jersey Mike's.
It's okay.
But I feel like subs are all kind of the same. I used to love Quiznos, but Quiznos isn't really around anymore.
I used to love Quiznos, too, because they were always toasty, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm hungry for subs.
Know.
We're
I'm
having
just
subs today
hungry in
because it is
general.
Grayson's birthday party today.
I think we're going to grill out.
So they're getting subs. You're going to grill out? It is supposed to be nice. But that's enough food talk from us for today.
I'm going to have to finish these walnuts.
So let us know what you guys think of MK Ultra. Crazy, depressing stuff.
Yeah.
It is. It's like so hard to imagine doing that on unsuspecting people.
Yeah.
But it was
Very
done.
cruel.
So thank you guys so much for listening. I feel like there was something else I was going to say this episode. If the world does end Monday, it was really nice having you guys as a part of this. And if the world doesn't end on Monday,
see you next time.
We'll see you next time. So from Krista and I down in the strange cellar, until next time, stay strange.